Welcome back to Ici Arts. Today's guest is filmmaker and multidisciplinary artist Lana Daher, joining us to talk about her new film Do You Love Me, which premiered at the Venice International Film Festival and has received several awards. The film is a playful and deeply personal journey through Lebanon's audiovisual memory, composed entirely from archival footage. Spanning 70 years of film, television, home videos, and photography, it serves as a love letter to Beirut, exploring memory, loss, joy, and the stories that shape a nation.
شو بعمل؟ صور مين؟
أنا.
انتي؟ ليش انتي حلوة؟
Do you love me? Do you need me?
Lana, thank you for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Lana, I'm so excited to talk about this film, especially after watching it last week at Metropolis Cinema, a film made entirely from archival footage, which is an unconventional approach. How did this project come to be?
So initially, when I started working in the project in 2018, I was researching the relationship between war and music. That's how it started. And bit by bit, I started to understand and realize that my real interest was not on this relationship, but it was rather on my experiences growing up in Lebanon as a child, as an adult. Also, it was more about our relationship with history as a society, how we remember. And so the themes of memory, of identity, childhood, trauma, all these themes started to come up for me. And the research slowly moved away from war and music, and it became more about these topics.
And where did you find all this archive?
So I found the archives in so many places. Actually, because in Lebanon we don't have this one unified history book, and because we don't have also a single national archive, I had a very deep curiosity and desire to work with this form, a form where it's only existing images and found footage and just existing material to make the film. We found the archives in private institutions, public institutions, universities, a lot of journalistic archives, podcasts. Also, more than half of the archives of the film are independent Lebanese cinema from the late 50s until today. We also used a lot of personal archives from home videos, personal photo albums. So it was a very, very wide range of materials.
You also worked with Qutaiba Barhamji, who has edited 2 Academy Award-nominated films. How challenging was it to navigate around 20,000 archival sources, decide what to keep and what to leave out, and ultimately stitch all this material together into a cohesive narrative?
It was extremely challenging. Everything about this project was challenging. The research was challenging. Working in Beirut, from Beirut, between 2018 and now on the film was extremely difficult. The 20,000 sources is the number of elements that was researched. And actually, I recently did a calculation, and the 76 minutes of the film is only 7% of the research that was done. And I spent around 5.5 years working on my own, as well as with junior editors and researchers on the research of the film before meeting Qutaiba. And so a lot of this research was extremely organized and was complete before meeting him. And then when I met Qutaiba Barhamji, the editor of the film, we really started rewriting and editing from scratch together. And it was still a very challenging project. He's worked on amazing films, but this was the first time that he works on a fully archive-based film. And so we worked together for around almost 6 months over the span of a year and a half. And in between editing sessions, I would, go back to the research and reorganize and refilter, and sometimes have to look for new things based on what we had done and based on where we were going with the edit.
Mm-hmm. And when working through so many fragmented sources, did the process feel like perhaps an act of preservation, especially in a country with no national archive? Or was it more like reimagining of what an archive could be?
I think it was a little bit of both. On one end, there was a lot of imagining. On another end, for me, what's very interesting about this project is that I used the archive that I used was art and culture and also human stories. So, for example, one of the podcasts that we used is a documentation of oral histories, and so a lot of the material that I used was already cinema, photography, books, music. They were all about Lebanon and all about Beirut. So I recreated my representation of Beirut and my representation of Lebanon, but I'm using everyone else's representation of this place and of this history in order to create my own. So it was a very interesting process. You know, how do you sort of find your point of view and your perspective and make it very personal, yet at the same time, you're using a lot of the time existing stories and existing points of views.
And how did you want to portray Beirut? Like, how did you balance showing the beauty and cultural vibrancy of Beirut alongside its history of war and violence without one overshadowing the other?
So this was also a very, a sort of long process, figuring out the point of view, figuring out my point of view. And I wanted to make a film that was about Lebanon and about history and about the emotional experience of society rather than a traditional history from a very classical political perspective. The film is political, but in its own right. One decision was to not use any politicians, not show them, not use their point of view, not use their voices. And so that in itself was the first political positioning of the film. And then it's more about the politics of everyday life and the politics of society and the politics of poetry. So it's a very different perspective of that. For me, what was very, very important was to make the film really focused on human stories and human experiences. And so the thread of the film that's holding it together is an emotional thread. And it's not dates of events or titles of events or taking one side of the story. It was a very emotional experience that I wanted to portray.
And Lana, while searching through decades of footage, did you notice any recurring emotions or perhaps unanswered questions or patterns across generations?
I mean, I noticed it's very sad to say this, but yes, I noticed a lot of repetitions, a lot of recurrence of violence, of war, of stories, just the same situations happening over and over again. And this is why also I wanted, I gave myself first permission to also use archives completely outside of their context. A lot of times in different practices of contemporary art and other kinds of practices, this is not usually done. But first, I gave myself permission to use the archives in this way. And then, of course, I needed to ask the permission of the right holders to use the archives in this way. And once I noticed these patterns, it did not matter anymore when the image of a demolished building had happened, where it was from, the effect of a destroyed home, the effect of a broken family, the effect of a death in a family due to war or violence affects people in the same way. And it doesn't matter what side it's from or when it happened or where it happened, because the emotional and psychological effect of these acts of violence were the same no matter where they happened. And this is why the film also is not linear in a chronological manner. It's and it doesn't respect time and space in that way. So again, we're always going back to, in a sense, the emotional experience of the events rather than their logic as we know it.
I'd like to talk about the title of the film, Do You Love Me? Is it a question? Is it a plea? A reflection, perhaps? Like, how do you want the audience to interpret it?
Initially, when the film was more about this relationship between war and music, I had taken the title from the famous Ben Ali family song, which in Lebanon and the Arab world we all know and love. And I met the Ben Ali family many, many times. They're wonderful people. And I thought at first that the film would be more about music. But when I realized that it isn't, the title stayed with me. And some point in like the seventh year of working on the film, we tried to change the title, but I was very, very attached to it because I later on realized that this title was very representative of this extremely complex love relationship that we have as Lebanese with our home, with our country. And I don't know if it's a question. I think it's more of this dialogue. Like, are we asking Lebanon if it loves us, or is Lebanon actually asking us if we truly love it? And it sort of became this dialogue around this complex relationship.
And the film at times channels a female perspective. Why did you choose to approach it this way?
Okay, as I was researching the material for the film, I discovered a huge a range of Lebanese female directors. Some of them I knew, some of them I didn't know. And it was extremely intuitive for me. As I was doing this research, I was discovering their perspective. I was discovering a lot of times their presence in their own films. And it was extremely intuitive for me to start sort of selecting this footage and their voices and their perspective for several reasons. First of all, a lot of these documentary filmmakers were extremely brave and they documented and preserved in very specific times of Lebanon's history. And so it was important for me to like shine a light on their work. And on another end, also for me, female narratives are sometimes the less heard narratives. And a lot of the work that was done in the archives of the film was also done from this perspective of decolonializing the archives. First of all, most of the archives of the film, like 99% of the archives of the film, are local archives. There's only about 2 minutes maybe that are from a foreign source. The rest is all very locally sourced. So I wanted to have an extremely local point of view. I wanted to have a female perspective because I also feel that women's voices are not heard enough. And in places like Lebanon, where we go through so much war, and not most of the time, all the time, war is guided and decided by men, not by women. Women are always on the receiving end of, tragic events, on the receiving end of holding space for grief and for all of the feelings that we go through in these very difficult conditions. So having a female perspective was extremely important for me.
And Lana, even if the history isn't familiar, do you think the emotions and themes in the film are universal enough to cross borders? Like, how are people reacting to this film?
This is something that, I was really hoping that the themes of the film, the experience of the film would be universal. And the film premiered in Venice in September. And since then, it's traveled to over 35 film festivals. I've traveled many times with it. And we've also had a cinema release in Germany in over 40 cinemas. We've had a release in France and also around a dozen theaters. And we're showing it, of course, in Beirut. But in the rest of the world, I've really, really had the experience of receiving people's reactions, receiving their questions afterwards and the discussions we have. And a lot of people know a little bit about Lebanon and they might have visited it and they connect deeply with the film. A lot of people have never been to Lebanon and don't know much about its history. And for them, it's been an extremely emotional experience, not just in discovering a place, but also in discovering the energy of this place. I've even had people from other places of conflict, but extremely different, like South Africa, Libya, Sudan, Georgia, the Balkans, who just feel that it reminds them of their home and of the tensions where they come from. I've had people from, the US and places that really have nothing to do, also in Northern Europe, have nothing to do with Lebanon, connect to moments between families. They connect to moments of children in the home videos. They connect to the humor of the film at times. And most people also really connect with the music of the film. So it's been a fascinating journey, just, receiving all these experiences and actually realizing that you can work on something that is extremely personal, but then can have this very powerful, universal human effect. For them, the film is about humanity. And that's been one of the biggest successes of the film.
Mm-hmm. And Lana, what responsibility do artists have in helping younger generations reconnect with history?
I mean, I think we all have a huge responsibility on an individual level, and of course that's a choice. For me, this film carries that responsibility, but it's also a film that I was able to do with full creative freedom. I was able to do it in the way that I wanted to, while still constantly considering my audience and thinking about this responsibility. For me, one of the very also special moments in showing the film in Beirut has been the experience of sharing it with a much younger generation from the age of 10, 11, 12 to people in their mid 20s. And it's been extremely interesting for them because they're discovering a part of Lebanon and a part of Beirut that they weren't necessarily familiar with. It's also creating a lot of intergenerational conversations with their parents. A lot of these young people are not familiar with what their parents have been through in the Civil War or in some of the conflicts that happened after. And so it's been extremely interesting. I even had some young students in their 20s who are studying to be psychologists. And for them, they said that they felt like it was very healing and very cathartic. And it was like an EMDR session where the only thing that was missing was the therapist guiding their eyes in the session. And it's just been very, very gratifying. Another thing for me that's also been extremely touching and very beautiful is that in Lebanon right now, there's extremely different opinions politically. And in the film, in the spectators of the film have been from extremely different religions, extremely different political views, and everybody comes out of it feeling very connected to their history, very connected to their experiences. I think that the film shows a lot more of what we share rather than what separates us as Lebanese. And witnessing that has been a wonderful gift.
Lana, thank you so much for being with us today. Best of luck with the film. We're so proud of you. I want to encourage audiences to go experience it at Metropolis Cinema. It's on view until.
Well, it's on view for as long as people go see it. And so far, they're showing it 3 times a day at, I think, 4, 8, and 10 p.m. every day. So please go watch it.
Thank you, Lana. Best of luck.
Thank you so much.